Maps in books, yay or nay?
I'm definitely a yes. And this is the reason why. Okay, so we had talked previously about how we stay on task with small projects and big projects, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
You have to have lists and stuff like that that keep you going, right? I have 7 boards in my room. 3 are black white boards. They have the smallest tasks to the biggest tasks to also the book launch, all of this. So I could stay on task. A map is in essence how an author stays on task with their story worlds to where they know where they're going, what town, the distance from that town to the next town. If they're saying that they're going out west to Timbuktu, and yet in your story you're saying east,
Yeah.
I think it adds a lot of realism to a story. If you as an author have that map in there, somebody could just flip the pages if they don't want it. It's like through a
Yeah.
sex scene. You don't
Yeah.
have to look at a sex scene, read a sex scene. You could just flip the pages. But truthfully, that map adds an essence. And this is like, that's a map right
Yeah.
there that I have
Pleasure.
already designed. You know, I'm a strong believer that maps add authenticity, add that realism, and it also helps the author stay on task to where they're writing and they're staying within the
Yeah.
framework, the mindset, and the creativity to keep the story moving. Did I
That's yeah.
answer your question?
You did, yes.
Yes,
Because
definitely.
I didn't put a map in my next book, Ancora, but I used one so I could map the journey. I don't think the
Yeah.
book really needed it, but I needed it to figure out.
But what about this? Okay, so there's something, I mean, you give your reader a story, and you know how, like, all these books now have to have these painted edges, and
Yeah.
oh, it's pretty and stuff, but does it add to the context of the
Yeah.
story when you open that story up? Not necessarily, it's pretty, it's like a beautiful kitchen, right?
Mhm.
But when you open the story world up and you could see, hey, for instance, the dagger that was used
Hmm.
to deal with a situation, a treasure or something like that, or the codex or something, that adds something. So whether it's an illustration or whether it's a map, those little things really add, or even pictures. I know a lot of authors lately are putting in illustrations and pictures. And book 2, I'm just working on the cover art for that because, like I said, I have the book completely done. It's polished, the words and everything. But I'm just now working on the cover art. You have to make sure that those things are authentic, they're
Yeah.
real. And why not put a map in there when it lets your readers know that you just didn't slap this together?
Yeah.
You
Mhm.
put your heart, your soul into it to make it a believable world for them. And especially, okay, so most sagas, series, they're only dealing with one world building situation. I'm
Mhm.
taking people from the human world into the Theron world, to the lore, everything, to a total different one that just is mind-boggling, you know? And then I'm writing, hopefully working on a standalone right now that will morph into something more. But you have to give your readers something tangible. And I think personally, maps do it. And I think you should put something different in about your map too that's unique. It doesn't just have to look like everybody else's map, from Sarah Moss or some of the other authors I might have around here. I mean, it has to be something original and authentic to your book series.
Take that, Ainy Cormac.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you on that situation. I grew up on fantasy. I loved my fantasy, Lord of the Rings is a big influence, but also my grandmother used to read a fantasy author called David Eddings. He's not as well known, but she got me into reading she would give me his books to read. And there was a series which I've talked about on this podcast before called The Belgariad, which was 6 books, essentially turned into 12, about, a hero's journey, about a young boy who ends up, fighting all these things with his famous aunt and grandfather who were these famous sorcerers and sorceresses. But what I loved about that book is David Eddings drew a new map for each book because each book took the characters to a different part of this world. So it wasn't a huge overall map. It was just a map of the areas that they were visiting in that particular book. So it wasn't too overwhelming by like, here's the whole world, set in a place called Sandaria. And here's the whole world of Sandaria. Here's the section that we're going to be looking at in the book. And then the next book would show here's the section we're going to be looking at in this book. So as I was reading, I could go back to the front of the book and go, oh, okay, that's where we're at the moment. So for me, I prefer those kind of maps to here's the whole world in the first book, and you've just got to keep going back to the first book, you know, for reference points. Because I am the kind of person who will go back to the map for reference points and go, oh, okay, here we go. You know, so I definitely agree that each author has different views of maps that have different, you know, ways to design those maps, but I think it does give the reader a better entry point into the world that you're creating. I mean, you guys have gone into so much trouble to create these worlds. Why not have a map in there to show the worlds that you've created?
Well, and the interesting thing is what I might put in 452 pages of a book, hardly any of it from the world building aspect is in that book. 90% of it is in like a folder stuck so far away, but it's what you use to bring to life the main essence of that story. So I actually am putting a little bit of more of that world building stuff, like the creatures, what they might look like, illustrations, that kind of stuff, because I think that is so pivotal. But like how we talked about Wilson, right? I'm not letting the reader know what the creature is right now. Even in the prequels where the creature shows up, I'm not doing that. And there's a true story. There's a true story how it, not that the creature's real, but there's a true situation on and happenings on why I created that creature, and I dive into it and share that. But I think it makes a story so much better when you can have those illustrations. And I know it's recent. A lot more authors are doing that because they have these ideas in their head. And whether it's like we're talking about maps in books, but whether it's a map of how that person looks or something like that, or the creature looks, it just, I don't know. I just think it adds so much more to it. So at least, I don't know. And at the same time, I could say that I don't want to know all the looks of a person and stuff like that. I don't want to be bogged down with 100 maps at the front of a book.
Yeah.
One map that's very detailed is fine.